I've grown to really appreciate the richness and the diversity of the people here. And you're constantly being bombarded by all these cross-cultural, sometimes conflicting and sometimes things that work together, influences, and I appreciate that. Well, actually, I think one of the good things about the economic crisis that's hitting New York so hard is that I don't know if it's necessarily bringing up a new generation of artists, but it's filtering out a lot of artists who were in it just for the fashionability and the novelty of it. So I think about to come up is a new generation of artists, or artists who are, I mean, it's only recently that you could make a lot of money as an artist and go to the fanciest restaurants as an artist. And I think that's new. That was never like that before. And I think people are going to do it because they enjoy doing it. And I've always been doing it because I enjoy it. And you have to enjoy it yourself first. And then you can never count on anything happening with it. Though, for me recently, things are beginning to happen. And I'm having a show in September in San Francisco. I just had this show at the Hudson River Museum. And I think if you just believe in yourself, and the other things will fall into place. Whereas this generation who's maybe being pushed out a little bit are the people who have been counting on things happening in terms of success for themselves. And I think that success obviously it's not happening anymore. Many galleries have closed recently. Art magazines are folding, and things are not good for the arts. But maybe as soon as we can get through this period, things will be better for the arts because there'll be people who are committed to it and not people who realize it fluctuates like everything else. I basically start by continuing to collect a large assortment of material, paper and stuff. And by constantly flipping through it, I'm, I guess in a sense, subconsciously or just barely aware of memorizing all the things I have. And I'll be walking down a street through one of these culturally diverse communities, and I don't know if it's where I am or all of a sudden some pieces of paper will begin to come together in some way, and then when I get back to the studio, I'll put them together, and that establishes a relationship, and then that will send me looking for another piece of paper that I have that's either related to those two pieces of paper that I've just put together. And then, well, one of those pieces of paper now doesn't work, either by color or by form or by my applied meaning. So I'll pull one out and substitute another image or piece of paper. And so it's this constantly shuffling things around, shuffling when I'm memorizing my supplies and shuffling under glass when I'm composing and putting these things together. And then at some point, I either get tired of what I'm doing and move on to another, or put that aside and come back to it at a later time. And then constantly being, I love just walking around New York. I think I certainly spend more time avoiding working in the studio and I guess working in the streets of New York and just being influenced and enjoying the city. And enjoying the things I don't enjoy about the city too. And I mean, you can walk to Chinatown and be in one kind of thing, and then cross the block and be influenced or bombarded by other influences. You'll be in Little Italy and Chinatown at the same time, and then you can cross another street and be in a very different cultural community. And the richness of that diversity is exciting. I think you can't choose what you do. You fall into it. You're driven to it. I don't know if you're like driven by a locomotive, but you're pulled in that. For myself, I'm pulled in that direction. I never decided this is what I'm going to do. I've done it, and for money, I've done things to facilitate that. I think people who run into artists and other people run into problems because they decide what to do with their lives. They decide to go into banking or something, and it doesn't naturally fit into what they do. It's a decision. It's not internalized, and they're in conflict, I think, about things they do, as are a lot of artists are in conflict about the work they do or having chosen that career. And a lot of people fall out from art schools and don't go through art school and don't do anything again. I think it's good they still went to art school. I think it makes them more creative and sensitive in some ways, but you know, it's not a bad thing. I think it just happens.
My artwork is about... Don't look at the camera, okay? Well, as you can see... I guess it's about me. It's about me, and direct questions like that are difficult to answer. Just simply, you know, it's not a story. I'm not making a story about even using a character, a specific character. I don't mean to make a narrative story. It's more like a symbolic kind of iconography. It doesn't have any, it's not preachy, it's not obviously political. I don't, they should be more enigmatic than something obvious, and that's when it works. And you can tell by people's reactions when it's too obvious or too, you know, didactic. It doesn't have that range of quality that you want it to get. So, you know, I like work that is that way. That's very, you know, accessible, really, in many ways. It's not that esoteric and difficult and arty-farty and overly indulgent in art historical references and everything. Or, you know, in other words, this is work that's very, it's my temperament is there in the work, and it's developed over the years, and a certain, you know, it's a kind of burden to have a language that you're identified with in many ways, because you're always under this pressure to grow and change, or, you know, then what does that mean? And, you know, people want you to have something really, I guess, that's successful in a sense, or commercially viable. So then they don't want you to change, you know, when you change in a way that they think is less, you know, can sell, you know, sell less. So basically what I'm saying is, like, you can't think about all that. You can't think about what's going to sell, what's not going to sell. At least I don't. And I guess you could be, you know, if you want to be more that way, then your work will be that way, you know. And some people's work is geared towards that way of making work, you know. It's very product oriented, and I realized because of my temperament that I wasn't really interested in being you know, making a product, or that I was the connection I have with my work is more personal. I want success like anybody, and in other words, my work may look like, well, it kind of works against the grain of that, doesn't it, in a way, because your work is difficult, you know. I mean, my work in some ways is difficult because they're violent images, or because they're sad images, or because, you know, I think they're funny in many ways too. But in other words, if I was thinking about it, like, if I were to think about it, I would, you know, then I wouldn't do what I'm doing.